Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're unpacking a massive, real time geopolitical paradox. We're talking about Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. military engagement with Iran. And here's the core puzzle we're looking at. What actually happens when an administration officially declares a war over on paper, but, behind the scenes, the military apparatus is still totally active and ready to go? How exactly does a conflict end in a letter to Congress, but keep going in reality? Let's get into it. To make sense of all this, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the war on paper, bypassing the War Powers Act, military readiness and conflicting views, the real impact on the price at the pump, and finally, the geopolitical fallout in Europe. Let's connect the dots. All right, Section 1, the war on paper, a declared end. So, to really understand why this administrative letter just got sent to Congress, we need to ground ourselves in the timeline of Operation Epic Fury. Hostilities officially kicked off on February 28, 2026. Then, after a heavy period where literally thousands of missiles and bombs were dropped, a ceasefire went into effect in early April. And well, that brings us to right now. We are exactly at the 60-day mark, and the White House has sent a formal letter stating that the early April ceasefire is holding and hostilities are officially terminated. But here's the thing, there is a stark, absolute contrast between the official paperwork and the reality on the ground. On paper, sure, the war is over. But in reality, President Trump hasn't actually decided to pull any Pentagon assets out of the Persian Gulf. In fact, if this ceasefire breaks down, Commander Admiral Brad Cooper has already prepped and presented new strike options. Now, President Trump has explicitly said he prefers not to use these new options on a, quote, human basis. But he made sure to note that the option is absolutely still on the table. It's this profound split, really, between what's written down and what's physically deployed out there. Moving on to Section 2. Bypassing the War Powers Act, the 60-day clock. Okay, to understand this legal strategy, because the timing here is definitely no coincidence, we need to quickly define a critical piece of legal jargon, the War Powers Act. Basically, this is a law requiring the president to ask Congress for explicit permission to continue military hostilities if those operations run longer than 60 days in a row. So, by sending a termination letter right as this 60-day window closes, the administration effectively maneuvers around the requirement to get congressional approval. Pretty clever timing, right? And the administration's stated legal justification for this bypass is incredibly direct. President Trump has stated that he actually considers the War Powers Act to be, quote, totally unconstitutional. It's important to neutrally point out here that this isn't necessarily a new stance. It's a long-held view among a lot of modern presidents. They've often bristled at congressional limits on their role as commander-in-chief. Basically, they sent the letter because they believe the ceasefire is holding, and they maintain they don't legally need Congress's permission anyway. All right, Section 3, military readiness and conflicting views. Are we equipped? Now, the legal battle is one thing, but let's shift gears and look at the internal military assessments. After all, thousands of munitions have already been fired in this operation. Behind closed doors, there's quite a bit of discussion about exactly what we have left in the stockpile. According to reporting by The Atlantic, Vice President Vance has actually expressed internal concerns to the president about whether we have enough of certain missile systems available. It highlights a very real, logistical worry about our depleted military inventory after such a major engagement. But the president really doesn't seem to share those concerns. Juxtaposing Vance's reported worry, President Trump has publicly projected total confidence. He recently stated, "All over the world, we have inventory. We could take that if we need it, locked and loaded." And as for Iran's next steps, Trump laid out the alternatives crystal clear. Either they make a deal or the U.S. will, quote, blast the hell out of them. So despite any internal debates about inventory, the outward posture is one of absolute strength. Which brings us to Section 4, real impact, price at the pump, the economic cost. Let's pivot from foreign policy to your everyday domestic reality. Why does this matter directly to us? Well, $4.39. That's the current cost of a gallon of gas, directly resulting from the instability of this war. It's a visceral, everyday reminder of a foreign conflict, and honestly, it's causing real frustration at the pump for everyday citizens. When international shipping routes and major oil-producing regions get threatened, this is exactly what happens. But this also sets up a clear condition for economic relief. We're towering at $4.39 right now, but analysts and the president note that as soon as the war truly ends and the strait reopens, that price is projected to plunge down to $3.50 a gallon. So the takeaway here is absolutely crucial. Resolving the reality of the conflict, the actual ships and missiles, not just the paperwork, has a direct, measurable impact on your household budget. Next up is Section 5, geopolitical fallout in Europe, withdrawing troops. Let's look at the global ripple effects, because this tension with Iran isn't just staying in the Middle East. It's actively altering relationships with major U.S. allies in Europe. The Department of War just issued a major new directive. Out of the 38,000 American troops currently stationed in Germany, the new order pulls 5,000 of them out, leaving 33,000 behind. And this isn't some overnight process. Physically relocating 5,000 personnel is a massive undertaking that's estimated to take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. So what's really driving this? Let's unpack the dual narratives here. The Department of War's official stated reason is pretty standard. They say they just finished a routine review of the force posture in Europe. However, the implied reason is a bit more complex. This move comes right as President Trump has been extremely critical of Germany in public, specifically pointing out their lack of help with the Iran war. So a lot of observers see this troop withdrawal as an implied retaliation, and it might not stop there. There are already warnings floating around that Spain and Italy could soon see American troops packing up and leaving their borders too. Which really brings us to the ultimate crossroads of this whole explainer. Think about it. The war is officially over on paper to satisfy domestic law, sure, but the military assets are still there. The economic strain is still hitting us at the pump, and our global alliances are actively shifting because of it. So the big question we have to ask ourselves going forward is this: will Iran actually agree to what have been called the magic words, a firm commitment to no nuclear weapons? Or is a return to actual physical conflict basically inevitable? What is it truly going to take for Operation Epic Fury to end in reality, and not just on a piece of paper? Thanks for exploring this with us today, and definitely keep your eyes on the straight.